Hello, welcome to Bigger Truth Media. This is the Bigger Truth podcast, and we are live right now on X, on YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. And we'll have show notes later on the Substack. That's biggertruth.substack.com. Please join me. Become a paid subscriber on Bigger Truth. This is my primary source of income. I'm doing this full time and I am loving every moment of it and would be really grateful for your support. I have today, Sheriff Lamb has agreed to be on the show and I am so excited. I believe that this actually started when I posted on X that about Sheriff Lamb wanting to do a debate. There's an article about a month ago about Kari Lake not wanting to debate Sheriff Lamb, and which was especially striking after she spent so much time during her gubernatorial race slamming Katie Hobbs for not debating her. So the hypocrisy is interesting here, and I believe that Sheriff Lamb is the only candidate for U.S. Senate in Arizona who can win the general election and sincerely wants to win the general election. So, but really, I want to make this all about you, Sheriff Lamb, and I'm just again, I'm so grateful that you're here and excited for what you have to share. Can you start with just kind of why are you here? What's your story? How did you get to this point of wanting to run for U.S. Senate?
Well, Scott, thank you first of all for having me on. I appreciate it, and thank you to your audience. I know you've really been doing a great job with this podcast, and I'm excited to be on as well. Look, why am I doing this? Because I'm a patriot. I love God, family, freedom, and the Constitution. And, I've always been a believer that if you're going to complain about something or you want something to change, then you should be part of the change. You should do something about it. The Constitution, the preamble, or the Declaration of Independence, I should say, actually has a part in it, and I should memorize it. But there's a part where it basically says, look, if you can do something about it, you should. And as I was going through this last election cycle and we were looking forward to this one, I had a lot of people saying, hey, Sheriff, you should run for Senate. You should run for Senate. You should run for Senate. And I finally told my wife, I said, hey, we got to come up with some reasons of why not to do this. But in that process, we started feeling very compelled to do it. And we were getting closer and closer. And for those who don't know, I have 5 kids. My wife and I have been blessed. My wife at 29 years, going on our 30th year, blessed with 5 kids. And my middle son, Cooper, he had an 11-month-old granddaughter of ours and a fiance. In December of 2022, we got a knock at the door on December 16th. And to have one of my chiefs, we opened the door and it was Paul Penzone, 2 of my chiefs, 2 guys from Gilbert PD. And one of them, my chief just looked at me and said that Cooper and the baby were dead. And, that changes your life immediately. And frankly, I wasn't interested in doing anything at that point, running for sheriff, Senate, any of it. And then my daughter-in-law died just a couple days after that to a DUI driver that hit and killed him. And, at that point, my wife and I, we were just in this cloud. But then somebody said something that kind of cleared it up. And really, I think that was the last straw that we needed that said, you have to do this, because there is no guarantee for tomorrow. And the only thing we take with us in this life is what we do. And many people have heard me tell that story. And I don't have a ton of time to, tell it the way I normally tell it. But that was probably the biggest thing that finally said to us, let's do this. And really we realize there's a need in this country. We've got some real problems. The house is burning down. And as a law enforcement guy, it's not in my nature to stand on the corner and wait for somebody else to run in or just let the house burn down. And so my wife and I made a decision. She's as much of a patriot as I am, that we would run into this building and we'd do something about it.
And that's a great analogy. I mean, it is really like running into a building. I mean, burning building. I mean, you are really putting yourself in, politics is a very difficult and dirty business, and you're putting yourself in all kinds of attack. And I know, I don't need to tell you that, it, but the sacrifice that you and your wife have put forward, for the state and for the country. I admire that. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And you're right. It is a huge sacrifice. And thank you to anybody out there running, because you put your life, your reputation, your finances, everything goes on the line. Your family gets drug into it. everything about it is tough. And I'm not out looking for sympathy, but I appreciate you recognizing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Orville says Arizona's next senator. He says the only candidate who's not a liar. Hannah says, let's
I appreciate
it. Well, I actually, yeah, we can leave that one. Orville also says, I agree 100%. Sheriff Lamb is the only choice. Linda says, election Mark Lamb for sure. And Jason here in Michigan says, we're all in this together. And yes, we are. So,
Amen.
So, what's your, what are your biggest reasons why should, I mean, you've got a lot of supporters here, but for somebody that may be sitting on the fence and thinking, you and Kari Lake sound pretty similar, in platform, what is it to you that distinguishes you, not just from Kari Lake, but, how would you choose to represent Arizona?
Look, no matter where I go in this country, or especially in this state, the issues consistently, the top issues have consistently been border, economy, and those were flip-flopping for a while, but now the border has become the number one issue across the board. Border, economy, crime, and national security. Those are the top issues wherever I go. There's an old Danish saying that says, whoever has the ability has the responsibility. Look, there's a country mile difference between me and any other candidate in this race when it comes to dealing with the border, understanding the border, having the relationships to deal with the border, the intricacies of it, how it affects our trade with Mexico. There's just so much involved in dealing with the border issue. And you need somebody that's really got boots on the ground, and there is no other candidate in the race. Frankly, I'll be the most knowledgeable senator in the Senate when it comes to the border and how to deal with it. And somebody who's actually dealt with it, not just talked about it, not come down here and walked along the fence once or twice, but to actually go out and do it every day and deal with it. You've got the economy. I've been a business owner, but not to mention, I've also been in government. I've been an elected official twice. I've been in 8 years now, and I understand what it means to have a budget. My budget's over $60 million. I get it's not several trillion, but I still have a very large budget that we balance, and we do the best we can, and we've stayed within that budget every year. Imagine that, a government guy who tries to stay under budget. And then you talk about crime. Crime's on the rise here. We got these Chilean gangs breaking into people's houses. We got Venezuelan gangs. We got crime amongst illegals that have come into this country. We got crime amongst Americans that are not being held accountable. And now more than ever, we need people that understand what it's like to deal with crime. When a guy comes into this agency, we've put him through a vetting process. Then we do a 6-month academy or 22-week academy. Then he goes through a 4-month field training opportunity. Then it's probably a year before he hits the ground. That's how important under the rule of law is. And even then, he's still not a good cop. So it's not something you can just step into and expect to understand. And then the last thing is national security, and understanding that our national security threat, the greatest threat, is not in daggum Ukraine. It's not over in the Middle East. It's not in Taiwan. The greatest threat to our national security right now is happening at the southern border, and we need people that understand that. And so when you talk about what the difference is or why am I doing this, it's having the experience and the knowledge, not DC experience, real experience. If you were to put somebody to a CEO to run your company, I would guarantee you're not going to hire somebody that, unless they have a tremendous amount of experience in the field or in the business that you're dealing with. And that's what I bring to the table. And I look forward to bringing that experience to the Senate here for Arizona and for the United States.
That's great. I mean, you've been a first responder essentially. I mean, you're there you're seeing the absolute direct impact of the crime that is happening at the border. Because you're in Southern Arizona, you're seeing that, as a sheriff and working with the EMTs and everything else to, seeing the impact of that. You look at other senators, what your comment there, that you would know more than any other senator about what's happening at the border. Every other Republican senator may have actually gone and visited the border to get their picture taken there. But you have a much different experience with that. So, we're getting a lot of comments about that too. Bonzo says, thank you, Sheriff. JC says, Sheriff Lamb is the only candidate that deals with the border issue daily. He's expert on the true border issues. uh, we have someone from Spain. I'm from Spain, but if I was in Arizona, I'd vote for Sheriff Lamb.
So thank you.
uh, so
Or I should say gracias.
muchas gracias. So what on the issue of the debate, because that was kind of what brought us together, I think, in the first place. And Kari Lamb has been saying that, there's this about a month ago, there was kind of some back and forth about, why won't she debate you? And then she said, oh, no, I would debate him as long as AZGOP sanctions it. And we haven't yet seen a sanction, any sort of invitation for an event from AZGOP. I don't know if she's kind of hiding behind them and asking them for the favor, to give her cover on that. But I know that they're listening. That's a big part of my audience is, people at all levels of AZGOP. And so, do you know if that's something that's going to happen? Is there any way that we can help to make that happen? Because I think that the people of Arizona would love to see that debate.
Yeah, one of the best ways you can do to make that happen is donate to the AZGOP. They're trying to run their organization. I think the AZGOP is more than willing to do it, put a debate together. And look, a lot of these issues, we're going to be pretty in line on a lot of these issues. But what I think it really does in a debate is it really gives the people an opportunity to see the vast difference in experience that there is. And I think the people should be able to get the best look at the candidates, because we're not talking about a small position as dog catcher. We're talking about one of the highest elected official positions in the state of Arizona and in the country. There's only 100 senators. And so we really need to make sure that we're vetting properly and getting the right person for that job. I think a debate is an important piece of that process. Where my schedule is allowed, I've accepted every opportunity from all the different clubs. And I think that the AZGOP would be the best probably to put that together. And I know they're working on it. So when you ask how we can make that work, you can donate to the AZGOP. Or donate to sherifflamb.com too, because I still got a campaign to run. But please donate to the AZGOP as well, and let's get them the funds that they need to be able to do things like this. Debates not just for the Senate, but for the different congressional seats and the different other seats that we have throughout the state. It is very important that we get good elected officials in, and the opportunity for the citizens in Arizona to see and vet those candidates.
Yeah, I think that's just an awesome statement. It really shows, it speaks to your character, that even before you're asking for donations for yourself, you're asking for donations to the party. I haven't seen anything like that from Kari Lake at all. But, one of the reasons why, another benefit of having a debate is that she won't be able to go around and spread, just provable, demonstrable lies about you. Which she has, I've seen video of her saying that you went to U.S. Congress and you said that Biden's 81 million votes were legitimate and he was legitimately and legally elected, and that there was no fraud in the election. And I know you've probably had to deal with those rumors and those lies. How would you respond to that?
This is why our party's broken in Arizona and why we're losing, is because the biggest attacks that I've ever faced have always come from other Republicans, not from Democrats. It's fellow Republicans. And, here's the beauty of that. That's a congressional hearing. You can go pull it up online, type in Homeland Security, Sheriff Lamb testifies. You can watch my entire testimony. I was asked if there was fraud. I said, yes, there's fraud in every election. Mm-hmm. And the guy said, oh, really? I said, yeah. And I started listing a few of the instances of fraud. And then I was asked a very important question. And remind you, I'm testifying in Congress under oath. Do you have evidence of large-scale material fraud? And I said, no, I have zero evidence of large-scale material fraud. What I would like to have quantified that with is Pinal County, because that's my jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm responsible for. That's what I can attest to. But what people don't understand is I don't live in the world of feelings and what you feel might have happened. I live in the world of what I can prove. I am expected as a law enforcement guy to have a level of temperament about me that says, look, he's only going to do what there is evidence to prove, and I have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And so to be able to say that there was fraud, the very next question, if I would have said yes, would have been, okay, well, what is that evidence? And so I wish I did, because I would have been the guy that would have loved to have gone after anybody that we knew was cheating in these elections. And I would have loved to have put them in jail. Can you imagine what that would have done, not just in the state of Arizona, but across this country? I would have loved to have been that sheriff. I looked for it. Unfortunately, I didn't have evidence of large scale material fraud, but yes, there's always fraud. And so if you don't, you're welcome to go watch that testimony. I encourage you to do so.
Yeah, and I'll actually be posting that testimony and putting that in the show notes on biggertruth.substack.com. So, when that'll be out here in a couple hours. So as soon as you see that, if you go, I'd say afternoon Arizona time, you'll see it up there. And I watched it, and it was a complete, not just a mischaracterization of what you said, but really a factual, untruth. So I'm glad that you clarified that and had the opportunity to say that. I'd like to do just a quick poll. If you're watching this live, and if you think that there should be a debate with Sheriff Lamb, just say yes, debate. and if you think no, then say no. I don't think we're gonna get many no's.
Put me down for a yes, because I can't text while I'm doing the interview, but put me down for a yes.
So a few more comments here, and this one's really good. Sheriff Lamb is a uniter, not divisive like Kari. Kari is dividing the AZ GOP. And that's something that, I've had other guests talk about, that there's, that there's a real problem there. And Becky says, after living in Ruben's CD the last 6 years, we cannot have him for the U.S. Senate. So do you want to speak to Ruben Gallego, and, what would be your message to him in the general election? How would you confront, the Democrat in the general?
Well, first of all, Ruben is basically a socialist. I mean, he's not basically, he is a socialist. They're trying to soften him up right now and make him look like some war hero and this thing. And I appreciate his service to this country. But the reality is, Becky is right. We cannot afford that here in Arizona. And frankly, it's not just Arizona. If you live in Michigan or wherever you live, that senator that we elect here in Arizona will have just as much of an impact on your state as it does on Arizona. And we cannot have that. He has been 100% behind all of the policies of this administration, whether it's the open border policies, which are breaking this country. We've got untold amounts of terrorist threats in this country now because of that. We've got fentanyl, which has become the leading cause of death in America amongst the ages of 18 and 45 for Americans. 100,000 Americans a year. That's the new terrorism, by the way. It doesn't sound like a bomb going off. It's a quiet killer. China's been able to kill over 100,000 Americans a year, and they haven't fired a single shot. That's real terrorism right there. And families feel that. And this is something that he has not been willing to stop as a congressman. You've got the economy. He needs to wear the economy because he's been lockstep with Joe Biden and this administration on all these issues as it relates to the economy. And the economy is a complete and utter disaster. Bidenomics is failing. The rule of law is under attack. Why? Because they support these policies that do not hold criminals accountable and only really kind of go after good American citizens, trying to take away our rights and our freedoms. Those are just a few of the examples of what this guy will stand for. These policies that he has consistently voted for over these last several years as a congressman. He has a track record, and his track record is awful, and we cannot afford it here in Arizona, nor can we afford it in America. This would be disastrous for this country. And so Becky's right. We got to do everything we can to keep him out. And to that point, I believe, and polls show, that I am the best candidate to beat Ruben Gallego. We've been working hard as a sheriff. I've had support of Democrats, independents, and Republicans. And as we've run this race as a statesman, as somebody who believes in this country, who believes in talking about the issues, that why I think I'm best for the issues, I think that is what they're looking for. And what we've seen is independents, Republicans, all Republicans, and even some Democrats will rally behind our campaign in the general election, and we will beat Ruben Gallego and take this state back.
And it really does seem that you clearly are gaining in the polls. You're gaining not just on Kari Lake, but the polls really do show what you said there, that the polls show that you have much better odds against Ruben Gallego than Kari Lake. That is an absolute true statement. A few questions here from viewers. As a country, as a county, how do we put pressure on Hobbs to shut down the border?
That's a great question. And look, we're doing it every day as sheriffs. We're constantly we met with her just last week, talking to her about what we need as sheriffs and what we expect from her as a governor and what we need from the state. Look, continue to reach out to your legislators, continue to reach out to Governor Hobbs's office. I know that when she gets these letters, she feels those letters. But what we're going to need is we're going to need support in dealing with this. Now, the legislature has attempted to pass many bills that would help us deal with a lot of these issues, like what Texas has done. Texas has been able to implement some things that has made it effective for them. We should be doing the same thing. Our legislature and our state Senate is trying to pass those laws. The question is, now will the governor sign those into law? So please encourage her to sign those laws. That would be a tremendous help to us. Could continue to push her to fund our law enforcement agencies, give us the funding we need to be able to help Border Patrol in their mission as well, because these are issues that are affecting Americans every day. So be vocal towards your governor, send her some letters, send them to your legislators as well.
That's right. Absolutely. Good answer. AZ Patriot says, I live in Arizona and would like my question answered regarding how law enforcement continuing to punish Americans while criminal aliens walk free. It's just another tax on the American people.
Well, I agree with some of that statement. I have to disagree that it is not all law enforcement. That is not what most law enforcement does. I do agree that, sadly, I've watched my profession do some of that. COVID, we saw a lot of that. And we're seeing some of it at the federal level as well, where the federal government is prosecuting and going after law-abiding citizens. And I'm concerned about that as well. But I cannot impugn an entire profession, because the majority of us are really working hard to try to protect constitutional rights against a government that is doing everything it can to take our constitutional rights. And that's part of the reason why I'm running for the U.S. Senate, because we need somebody bold as a lion. I may be a lamb, but I'm bold as a lion, and we need that in the Washington, D.C. and in the Senate. You know, I sometimes tell this story. You know what the anti-venom, because I think we all agree there's a bunch of snakes in Washington, D.C. How they come up with an anti-venom for a snake bite is they actually pull it from sheep. Sheep are very robust and hardy animals. They give them a little bit of the venom, and that venom then turns into an anti-venom that they can then give to people who get stung by. So what you need is a guy like me that is the anti-venom to the snakes that exist in Washington, D.C.
I love that. Pit vipers. I love that. I love that, Sheriff Lamb. Let's see. You know, and to that point, you're absolutely right. It's not law enforcement. It's the judicial system, much more than that. And that's really what the Senate, that's one of the big responsibilities of the Senate is, you know, when we're electing a senator, we should be looking at, okay, is this person going to vote to approve Trump's judicial appointees? Because those, you know, the president appoints the judges and to federal courts and to the Supreme Court, and the Senate approves them. And so, you know, I think that understanding, you clearly have that, and I'm sure you've had that even on a local level as a sheriff, working with a prosecutor in a court system that, you know, that doesn't, you know, there's no perfect court here on earth.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that is one of the problems in this country, is we're broken in the sense that Congress is stagnated because we got division. We either have uniparty or we have complete division. And the uniparty seems to be all in lockstep when they want to give money to other countries. But anything else that helps Americans, they are completely divided and polarized. Then you take the executive branch. The executive branch has been doing nothing but passing executive orders, mandates, which is not what the founding fathers intended. And so basically they're passing laws when they don't have the authority to do it. And then you've got, well, they're not even laws. They're passing mandates and orders. Then you've got the judicial branch. And that's why this administration now is appointing such horrible judges, because they intend on pushing forward this agenda, and they are legislating from the bench, which is why it's important you have a senator that understands what a good judge is and what a bad judge is. And one more thing as it relates to the rule of law, kind of touching back on that last question, is where we're really failing is the federal government's law enforcement piece, which most of that, almost all of it is not involved, was not in the Constitution. These have been constructs throughout the years that we've implemented more government agencies, more government overreach. You need a good senator that's going to yank the chain back on it, that understands the role of government and the role of our states. And we need to make sure that we keep that federal government out of our states as much as possible. I intend on being one of those senators who does it. And I look forward to cutting into these federal agencies and getting rid of some of them, and cutting and digging into all of them.
Yeah. We've talked about a lot of issues here, but I think that is really, if I'm a one issue voter, it's on getting rid of the deep state, because that's really the one issue that is going to affect every other issue. And there aren't many people in this country that are willing to that have the courage to take on the deep state, because it is truly dangerous, much more dangerous than even running for Senate or being the sheriff of a border county. And so, where just briefly, where do you stand on the deep state, and what can be done to take down this really far left bureaucracy that's running this country?
You've got to get people that are not beholden to Washington, D.C. and the money that's there and the politics. Look, I'm not endorsed by any of the senators. I didn't want their endorsement, or any of those politicians. I didn't want their endorsement. They've been the one that's jacking this country up. And frankly, I'm not getting the money from D.C. and all the Senate committees and all that. They know who they want, and they want to tell your state who to vote for. And I think the people are tired of that. It's not working. It's broken. You need to send somebody that's not beholden to them. I owe them nothing. The only people I'm going there to serve is the American people. And I think that's what we need now more than ever. And look, I have a strong moral compass. I've been a conservative my entire life. I have never wavered. I don't flip-flop. I am pro-life. I am pro-Second Amendment. I'm pro-Constitution. And I have showed those things throughout the 8 years that I've been the sheriff. And I think that's what we need, is people that are not going to kowtow and bow, and frankly put themselves in compromising positions to where that deep state then dictates what you're going to do and say as an elected official. I think I'm beholden to the people. And frankly, I'm not doing this to win more elections. I'm doing this to save our country. And if you decide to vote for me 6 years from now, if I decide to run again, then then we'll deal with that then. But for now, know that you're sending back a guy that will fight tirelessly for God, family, freedom, and the Constitution.
Absolutely. That's just fantastic. Steve Johnson says, on similar, really aligned with that, where do you stand on term limits?
I love them. I think you should have term limits. I think the only reason the founding fathers didn't put term limits in is because they didn't anticipate planes, trains, and automobiles. I don't think they knew the ease of travel between the states and Washington, D.C. And they never imagined that some guy would want to spend an entire career in Washington, D.C. They had farms, they had businesses, they had families they had to go back and tend to. So it was a duty. It was a responsibility as more than it was a job. And I think the way we get back to that, and the way we start to reduce the amount of bad dollars, dark money in Washington, D.C., is by saying you can only be here for so long. Companies will stop putting as much money into politics as they are currently, because they won't be able to keep those elected officials for as long as they'd like to. I think that's the only way you're going to break this stuff up.
Absolutely. And Steve's got another good question. Do you support a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution?
Yeah, not only do I support it, I do that here in my own agency. I support a balanced budget. I think we should absolutely. It's sad that we have to actually put an amendment in the Constitution to tell our government to balance your budget. Like, that's sad that we're to that point. But we're living in bizarro world where now we have to actually tell our government we're not going to tolerate this anymore. There's something called the Overton window. I don't know how many of your listeners know what the Overton window is, but it's a set of ideas or acceptable business practices that we allow the government to work within. Government practices, not business. Government practices that we, the people, say, we're going to let you work within this window. What the government does is they shift that window. And let me give you an example of that. While it may not necessarily be completely relying on the government, gas is a perfect example. When Trump left office, gas was under $2. They slid it all the way over $5. And then now when it goes back to $3.50, we're like, oh, good, gas is back down to $3.50. No, it should be at $2. because they slid the Overton window with us. The same with the border. They slid it. They allowed so many people to come in. Now they want to say, well, we'll pass a bill that says we're only going to allow 5,000 to come in a day, which, by the way, if you can stop it at 5,000, you can stop it at 0. But when they say we're going to allow 5,000 to come in a day, well, a year ago, we were only getting 2,500 in a day. So what they've done is they've slid that Overton window. They continue to do it to us as the American people. And we've got to say, knock it off. We're shifting the Overton window back to where the founding fathers intended it, back to the real role and true role of government, which is minimal. And the states, more states' rights is what I'm looking for. So that's, I know I went off on a tangent, but
I think that's wonderful. And I really appreciate, I think that speaks to the fundamental problem that we're experiencing. So let's see, we have I'm just looking through the comments, so many comments I'm not gonna be able to get to. It looks like overwhelmingly everyone says yes, we need a debate. And I think what Sheriff Lamb said was, we need to, the best way that you can influence that is to help donate to the party and donate to Sheriff Lamb's campaign. To how do people get in touch with you, and how do they help you out? Not just with money, but also with time, knocking on doors and influencing people.
Yeah, look, my opponents are going to outraise me. The Democrats are outraising us by, they've got a ton of money. And that tells you how much they want this position. And the only way we're going to be able to defeat that is, look, we're never going to compete with the money, but if you can donate some of your money, that'd be great. I don't want it from the PACs. I don't want it from these big lobbyist firms. Go to sherifflamb.com. Please donate some money today. That'll help our campaign. Go donate to the AZ GOP. And frankly, please donate to your local candidates. Our state legislators and our state senators, it's hard for them to raise money, but we cannot lose this state. We cannot afford to lose the legislature and the Senate, because that will change Arizona overnight. And so please donate to your local candidates. Mine's a high profile race, so people are more inclined to do that. But I will please challenge you to make sure that our day-to-day lives are more dictated by your local and county officials and state officials than it is by somebody in Senate. So please donate to them as well.
Sheriff Lamb, you are genuinely good man. It's clear that you're not just in this for yourself. And, I appreciate you. And I can tell by the comments that there's a lot of people that really appreciate you. And I wish you Godspeed. And I hope that things really continue to build. You've got the momentum right now, and we've got a little bit of time left. July 30th is the primary. Is that correct?
That's right. 3 months.
Yeah, so you've got 3 months, and everybody just help Sheriff Lamb get across the finish line. We need him in the general. He is the only candidate that wants to, and really will win the general election. So let's get him there. This is a grassroots thing, and I know it can happen. So, do you have any parting words? Any last
Scott,
thing?
thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everybody, for coming on. Your comments, your questions. Look, folks, America is still the greatest country in the world. It is redeemable, and we need to do everything we can to fight for it. This is the Alamo of freedom. If we lose freedom here in America, there is nowhere else to go find it. And these founding fathers, they sacrificed so much to give us what we have. So my hope and prayer as I part ways with you today, Scott, is that God grant us all the same faith, strength, and courage exhibited by those patriots of old who pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their honor that we might be free. That's what it's going to take this country back. It is worth saving, but it's going to take all of us. We, the people, we can do this, and we can certainly do it in the state of Arizona, but the Republican Party's got to come together, and we could use you independents as well. And even those Democrats who don't believe in this craziness that's going on, let's take our state back. And let's put a statesman back in, somebody who loves this country and who understands what real elected official service is.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And if you're joining me for the first time and on this show, my mission is to expose the weaponized narratives behind the Marxist agenda that and the operators that wield those narratives. And I've got a lot of great guests coming up. We've had a lot of great shows here recently, and I would say that this is right up there with my very favorites. So thank you so much, Sheriff Lamb, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us live. And wish you all the best. And we will be in touch. I'd love to touch back with you later on. So,
amen. I'd love to. God bless you, brother. Thank you.
God bless you too. Thanks.